Alright, so we're going to have a go at getting a canvas going. So the easiest way to get a canvas is we'll just start in HTML and then just work in script tags. But before we do that, we want to get a canvas going. So I'll just save this. Just call this. Alright. When I save this text file, so I'll save as .html. Helpful. There we go. So when we do this with a canvas, this is what we're accessing. Is this tag, and we're going to be doing stuff with it via the scripting code that we're going to put in. And there's a certain amount of this, it's just pure setup, so it's not like you have to desperately memorize it. As long as you get that bit in and then you can access those parts, then it's the rest of the other stuff that you want to understand. So first we're going to use an ID. Generally speaking in Canvas, sorry, in JavaScript, when we use access things in JavaScript to the HTML, you want to use an ID because an ID can only be used once, and those same terms that you're linking through in JavaScript can only be used once. In terms of you can't have an ID that does several things in HTML, that would be conflicting. So we're going to call it game canvas, width 400, sounds good, and right. What we want to do is we want to be able to access this in an easier way. So essentially what we want to do is set up a few things. So we want a canvas, and we want we also want to oh my goodness, right, this thing's quite important. It means that we're going two variables. Right, now to set up this main onload function, getting this canvas being used and then using these two things, so it's easy to refer to the actual canvas object as well. So we got window.onload. Right, so this is our first function. So if we want to say that we're using a function, just check. I'll just double check this right, which it wasn't. Yeah. Okay, so we want to say what the canvas is. Well, yeah, because I've already got it as a variable, so I don't need to declare a variable. Right, so if you've done anything in JavaScript and you wanted to access part of the HTML, it's this document, then get element. Oops. By ID. Case is quite important, and that being up is quite important. In brackets, speech mark, and then we identify the ID tag that we want to grab, which is this one here. So we know that one's error free. And then what we want to see is do the canvas context equals the canvas from above dot oh my goodness, what is it? Yeah, I'll just check across here. So this is the initial setup. I've been flicking backwards and forwards, but it's just get the context and put it into a 2D context. And then let's just have a quick look through here. I'll just chuck this in, and then I'll explain the rest. Then this is the initial setup part that we can work through. Okay, set interval is a built-in JavaScript function that sets how often this particular function runs, and it has two parameters that we've put in here, so two things, so hence in between these. So one's a function, and then one is the actual rate of occurrence. So this is basically a second in broken up into milliseconds, and then divided by 60, so we've got 60 frames per second. So that's your frame rate essentially of how often it runs this update all function, which we don't currently have, so we need to chuck that in. So function, I think it's the way you do. Oh gosh, I haven't yeah, okay. So yeah, function, then declare the name of it. So up here is called update all, and then we would define what's happening in here. What this is a place to dump all of our other functions, and then essentially this then says re-render everything on your screen in the canvas, so, you know, 60 times a second. So we don't really need anything in there. What I'm going to do is just going to make a simple function. I say simple, but functions I always found a little bit tricky to get my head around until I started doing it in something a little bit more of a context. It just made sense to me anyway. Right, so we want to do color rect. So we want to make a rectangle. Now, remember I talked about these parameters and functions and like what the heck's with these stuff you put in here and what is it? So when we're doing a rectangle object in JavaScript Canvas, what have you, it takes a few different arguments, or there's different parts to it. So there is the top x, I'll just say top x, there's a top x, top y, so that's starting in the top right hand corner going for a crossways, then going through the top hand corner going x. So if I was to say going across x, so if I'm going across, you know, that would be, as I come across like a crossways, that's where I'm going to start drawing the function, the rectangle, and as I come downwards y, that's where it's going to start drawing. Then I'm going to say I'll just go width x and height x, and then color fill. What are we going to fill it with? Okay, so those are all the different parts of it. And then essentially what we do, these random things that are in here, we then define what they actually are here. So then when we want to use this color rect function up here, so if I wanted to use it to draw in a, I could essentially write in the numbers for these and then the color I want in here. So I just got to put the argument in correctly to then do that. So I'll just pop across and we'll just double check, because it's this one here that I couldn't remember. Okay, so let's just copy these in and then I'll tidy them up. Right, okay, canvas.context, which is this one here. So this is where we're linking through this, and this is, you can see why the setup was important, because you need to refer back to these things all the time. Okay, fill style equals a fill color. So I've called mine color fill. So I will then update it to the correct term here. So color fill, and then canvas.context fill rect, and then I've got top left x. So I've got top x. So I probably should actually put it as left, because that is correct, because it is starting in that top left hand corner. And top y, and this is top left y. Box width, so I've got width x. Well, I can change this to that's fine if I want to do it this way. Box width, you can tell I'm obviously a little bit fresh to this as well. Box height, and then color fill, and color fill's the same. Righto, so this is now, zoom out a tiny bit just to make it look little, yeah, there you go. Okay, so now that we've got these things defined down here, I would then type them in order going here. So if I wanted to say I'm going to do the whole canvas and I'm just going to fill it in black, so this would be 0, 0, and then the width here, well, I want to do the full width, and I know up here I said it was 400, but an easy way to say that, because what happens if I wanted to change it later or what have you, so I can just go canvas, which is this one here, you know, the whole thing, grab it, dot width, canvas dot height, and then if I want to put a color, the format is that you need to put it in speech marks and then you define the color. So if I go black, hopefully we have success in here. So let's run this now. And if it pops up with a black box, great, I've done everything perfect. If you haven't, if you've got some errors somewhere, you just do your F12 and look through your console, and then you should hopefully have something here logged that says, okay, something's gone astray. Now our next thing to get us kind of going and just test something ourselves, because this is a lot of this just initial setup, is like, okay, can I actually do something myself now? Is let's do another color rect, and we'll try and make it like it's a player in here. So top left, top right, and then I want to put, so let's just get it in first, so let's just chuck it in that top corner first, and then we'll and then the width and the height, I'll just say it's like 50 by 50, and then the color will be red. So hopefully this should update a little. Perfect. Okay, so this all worked. If I wanted to make this a player and use some variables and identify bits and pieces, because I'm wanting to actually use this a lot more, then we need to define some things. So I'm going to just define it after this initial setup part, because I don't really need to refer to any of that stuff again. So I'll call it, let's talk about this. What should we do? Okay, so we get, okay, yeah. Okay, so, var x pos equals 0. So this is if we wanted to have the player moving around or what have you, with this little red square. If we wanted to have it moving around, we'd need to track its current position. And I'll put it as 0, which is essentially the same thing here, but I'll do something else with it. I want to give it a size. That size is fine, so we'll work with that. So I'm going to call it a constant though. If you haven't been used to a constant, it's the same thing as a variable, but a variable changes. This position will obviously update throughout the course of the program or the game, where this will just stay fixed. So when we do that, we're just going to so that there will stay the whole game. It will stay that way, dividing on. That's how I've decided for how my game will run. So in regards to that, we'll call that a constant. Then what else are we putting into the argument? So I've got x and y, that, and a color. Well, that's not really all that important. So okay, so let's update this. I want to put it center of this. I want to chuck it in the center. So what I can do then is go canvas dot width divided by 2, and that will put it pretty much center. Not quite though, and I'll show you why. Canvas dot height divided by 2. Then this would go in as p size. Oops. And then this would also be p size as well. Red. Okay. So this edge corner is dead center, as you can see, but I want the center of this to be the center. So what I've got to minus off is half the width and half the height. So if I go back, and then so canvas.width minus player size divided by 2, and this is where things start looking like it's really big and really detailed and what have you, but actually when you break it down and when you look at it, it's not as bad as you would think. Right, so there you go. That's the center there. The next step, what we want to do is we want to get this player ball, just getting it moving and bouncing from side to side. The great thing about it, this constant, is if I decide to do this and say, oh, actually I want it to be quite small, there we go. So I'm going, oh, okay, I want it to be a bit bigger then. There you go, there's our player size there, it moves around, it bounces around, what have you. If I was to suddenly say, actually I want this to be bigger, I want this to be, I don't know, 600 by 600, or just more landscape looking. I can do things like that as well. So this then which I think that looks weird, so I prefer it like that, to be perfectly frank. Then there we go. We've got this. It can be varied. It can be changed up, and I haven't had to really worry about anything else, because if I wanted to manually type the sizes in here for this black canvas, and I wanted to actually just type it in as 600, because it's accessing and rendering things on this tag, this original source needs to accommodate for that. Otherwise, it will cause some overlapping issues. Actually, let's just test it out, because I haven't really been bothered to test this out. I'll say plus 200. Okay, so it should get like really wide in theory. And see, it hasn't. The reason why is because the canvas is defined as being that size, and so even though I've tried to define another 200 pixels over here, it's just said, well, I can only fill it as wide as it is. So hence why this works as 100%, because if I ever wanted to update this, I really had to go back to the raw source anyway. So there you go. That's your introduction bit for anyone who missed it from class, and then we'll go on to the next part of, yes, getting this to just move, and then we want the idea is that it will bounce off the edges, so we'd have to get it to figure out as it's moving, how does it know it's moved enough to be on an edge to want to bounce back the other way, and then we get it bouncing off all four sides. Cool.